Hey folks, it's Kary Oberbrunner. I have a question for you today. You've heard your entire life, hey, what's your IQ? What's your EQ, emotional intelligence? Some of you are really savvy, but I'm going to ask you today, what is your GQ? And our author today, our speaker, our influencer, Dr. Tim Elmore. How you doing today?
I'm well, Kary. How about you?
Listen, man, I am so excited about your book. I've been blessed enough to see a sneak peek. I've read it. It's, I have kids who are Gen Z. I have parents who are boomers. I'm an Xer, and I am learning so much. First of all, a new kind of diversity. Tell us what in the world that means.
Yeah. Well, Kary, you know this, but for decades now, we've all heard about ethnic diversity, and we need to pay
Mm.
attention to that. We've heard about gender diversity. We've heard about income diversity, and all those are key. But I think there's an elephant in the room that we're not talking about, and it's
Yes.
generational diversity. There are workplaces, including the one that I lead, has 4, maybe 5 generations of teammates working together, or at least trying to work together. And even though we like each other, we kind of see somebody 2 generations apart as a little bit of an oddball, and we kind of avoid them because we don't know about their language or their customs or whatever. And
Yes.
so it's like talking to a person from another culture. It's a cross-cultural experience. And so this resource and this conversation today is really about how do we blend rather than be conflicted when we're just different.
You mentioned in your book, I love this story. I think it's the guy's name is Tony, maybe, but he's in a paint
Yeah.
shop.
Yeah.
And tell us that story, because I was like, oh my gosh, I could see how a guy could get lit up by corporate for doing
Mm-hmm.
this creative thing. And yet here he is growing the
Yeah.
company, and yet he's being penalized because he's speaking a different language.
Yeah. So you know this, Kary. I have a ton of true stories in this book. This is a true story, listeners. Tony, during his senior year at Ohio University, uh, got a part-time job at Sherwin-Williams Paint Store, which is a great brand. And he was working part-time, but while he was there, he started doing some very creative things, mixing paint. And so he started a TikTok account and he grew it. I mean, I don't think he was brilliant, but he grew up to 1.4 million followers on TikTok. He'd mix blueberries with white paint and store it together, and it made this really cool shade of blue and just really innovative. So he thought to himself, my gosh, with 1.4 million people following me, I should take this to management and, tell them maybe this would be a great thing to monetize, and turn it into a marketing tool. So he puts
Absolutely.
a slide deck together, Kary. He's following all your rules. He puts this great presentation together. And Tony doesn't get one interested listener in management, doesn't get one person interested in looking at the slide deck, but he does get something he didn't expect. Tony got fired.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. So they thought maybe he was mixing this paint during, business hours on the clock, or maybe he's stealing the paint, all the stuff that older generations can sometimes suspect in a younger generation, kids today.
Yes.
So they fire him. Well,
Oh my
Tony now
gosh.
has left Ohio. He's down in Florida with 2 million TikTok followers. And of course, Sherwin-Williams, albeit they may have really good reasons, have let this guy go that could have helped them reach 1.5 million people, maybe
Oh
more.
my
But they
gosh.
just didn't see what the younger generation saw. Yeah.
That is so frustrating. I come from the church world as a former pastor. I
Yeah.
was a young guy, just like you at one point, who was stirring the
Yep.
pot.
Yeah.
And of course, back then, as I was writing things, they were saying, "Oh, emerging church, emergent church. This
Yeah.
is out of the
Yeah.
box. We're not going to talk with this guy." And
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
remember getting letters from older pastors where publicly ripping me to shreds and thinking like, "Oh my gosh, like thankfully God didn't let me be immature about it."
Yeah.
But I probably could have been like, "Well, heck with these people. I'm leaving and I hate God and blah blah blah." Thankfully I
Yeah.
didn't do that. And actually I picked up the phone and called the guy and said, "Hey man, I see some of these articles. What's up?"
Yeah.
But Tim, why, I mean, the stakes are high. If you
Yeah.
cannot read people's correct, I think you say in your book, new worlds create demand new words. Let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it really, I mean it when I say sometimes when let's say 61-year-old is talking to a 22-year-old, it does feel like I've flown to another country
Yeah.
and I must do the work of learning new language, learning new values, and learning new customs. It doesn't mean I adopt them all. It means I'm aware of them as I interact with this person from India or Mexico or wherever. That's all we're saying. And so in the resource, I try to say, here's what the boomers were experiencing. By the way, your story you just told, I experienced the same thing as a baby boomer. I was a kid back in the 60s and 70s, and they thought we're going to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
You know, and now we're the older generation doing the same thing to millennials and Gen Zers and Alpha generation children. So I'm going, we need to stop this cycle that's unintended, but happens over and over and over again.
Wow.
So my goal is to help you put the work in to connect with that person from a different generation, learn from each other so we can better the mission or the organization we're trying to build.
This is so good, man. I love it. Let's talk a little bit about this concept that you've really laid it out clearly in your book, but it's essentially GQ. It's generational quotient, and you almost talk about a fluency. You know, certain people, I would say, wise leaders today know how to speak with fluency in multi generations, but unintelligible leaders, they're going to miss it. Talk a little bit more about that.
We tend to speak and lead based on who we are, not who they are. You know, I speak out of my own comfort. I'm a boomer. This is what I'm going to do, you know? So you know what we do, Kary? You and I've talked about this. We accumulate stereotypes. So in the last year, I've heard this. People will say, all baby boomers are stubborn. All Gen Xers are skeptical. All millennials are narcissistic. And all Gen Zers are fragile snowflakes. You know, haven't we heard that? And yet we know that's not true. What if we could see the other angle that baby boomers bring to the team? Stories and experience and wisdom. That Gen Xers bring contrarian points of view and pragmatism that we need. Millennials bring idealism and confidence and hope. And Gen Z brings a hacker mindset and an entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, 72% of high school students today, Kary, want to be an entrepreneur. 7 out of 10. So will they all do that? No, they won't. But we should capitalize on that spirit. That's what made our country great, is we were a bunch of pioneers at one point. So I love the future. I love the future if we'll get this right, but we got to read them before we lead them. That's what I'm saying.
Ooh, I like that. You got to read them before you lead them. Is that what you said?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so good. Wow. So here's the book. The cool thing is people are getting the brand spanking new view of this because, again, it's not out until what? October 25th.
Yeah.
Wow. So thanks, first of all, for coming, because I know a lot of authors who believe in scarcity. They're like, well, I'm not going to talk about that until it's released. So thanks, first of all, for doing that. But I love what you say here in some of this sales copy here. You basically say, look, some of these hashtags that we're seeing left us scratching our heads. There's a generational gap. Talk into your book, because again, I'm so glad I was able to read it. In your book, you mentioned the NIL, the name and likeness dilemma, and how different coaches in the room mention the view differently. Talk about that for me.
Yeah, so this was a Power 5 athletic department. You all would know the name of this, but I watched as they were discussing the name, image, and likeness issue, which is a big NCAA conflict right now, where student athletes will get paid for their brand, their jersey, their name, etc. So I noticed that a lot of the athletic administrators, the ADs, were baby boomers. A lot of the staff and some of the coaches were Xers. A lot of the assistant coaches were millennials. And then, of course, Gen Z was the student athlete. They really looked at the NIL issue along generational lines. Millennials see the Gen Z athlete going, man, that's you should get paid for, being a student athlete if you're really good. But of course, the older generation saw something perhaps that the younger didn't. They were thinking, do you realize how this could divide a team where 2 stars get paid and course, the rest of you that are blocking for those stars aren't getting paid an extra dime at all. You can see how you've got to see the big picture. That's why I think we need each other. And that's really the point I make. I first try to convince listeners, you need to measure your GQ, your generational quotient, because you may be off and not even aware that you're off, that teammates are laughing at you at the water cooler because you're so out of touch.
Yes.
And my goal, Kary, isn't to make everybody hip. I'm just saying we just need to understand each other. I love it when I see family reunions where grandparents are sitting down with grandchildren and aunts and uncles are sitting down with nephews and they're just having great conversation because they love each other. Imagine that, a workplace where we love each other. So that's what I'm pushing for with this resource. Yeah.
That's so good. Talk to us a little bit about, I know like some big companies hire you. I'm asking you to, so just name drop a few companies who've hired you, because I think it shows that, look, these big corporations are serious about generational diversity. They recognize it's an issue. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm honored, Kary. Thanks for, by the way, having me on. And I love collaborating with you. So I've talked about this issue with Home Depot folks, Chick-fil-A folks, Delta Global that hires the staff that are out in the tarmac at Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola Consolidated, just different groups that have recognized we have a diversity on our team that we haven't quite figured out. Yep. And I don't think I'm the guru of all gurus, but I walk them through processing what value each adds. How do you build a bridge of relationship that can bear the weight of truth? That's a statement I make. We've got to build bridges of relationship that can bear the weight of hard conversations sometimes.
That's good. That's
good. So that's really, those are some of the organizations that I've had the privilege of working with and trying to help. Yeah.
Why do you think they're serious about it? Why, and dare I say, I know this isn't a Christian live stream, but I think sometimes the world, in fact, I was just reading a parable about how, like, it says that sometimes the world is more shrewd than the kingdom of God. Why are they saying, look, we got to get this thing right in our corporations?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, there are some companies, and like you mentioned, Christian ministries that are nice. And nice isn't always nice. We just don't talk about things that are hard. We want to just give grace. And I'm thinking, well, that's all good on the surface, but eventually it's truth and grace that we need. And so I think companies get it because their bottom line is on the line. Ooh, and sometimes I don't think we realize, this could hurt us. And I would say to faith-based organizations as well as public organizations, your mission is at stake if you don't get this right.
Wow.
And it's funny, since 2020, didn't we all decide to get DE&I right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion right? Well, this is one of those issues. We need to pay attention to this just like we do ethnicity.
Interesting. So dare I say, I know this is edgy, but hey, we're not a PC place here. It's let's say this. Sometimes it's easier to see the racial diversity because you can see it. I mean, you can see what color skin is this person. Gender diversity, hey, you can even see, like, is this person male, female? Are they identifying differently?
Yes.
But when it comes to generational diversity, because we're not aware of it, we're just like, wow, this person's an idiot. This person's a jerk. And we kind of miss it.
It's so true, Kary. In fact, one of my favorite quotes in the world was a little known quote from Abraham Lincoln. He once said, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better.
Ooh,
isn't that brilliant? I don't like him. Good. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get to know him better. It's hard to hate people up close. Brene Brown said that first, and I think she's spot on. So I tell a story in the book that I really think might be a great volley back to your point there. Maggie and Antonio both worked at a fast food, a quick service restaurant, a well-known brand that we would all know. Maggie was the hiring manager. She interviewed Antonio, who was a young, a Gen Zer, 20 years old.
Yeah.
And she decides to hire him. She's gone through in the interview all of the policies and the procedures. He gets hired. Well, one of the policies for this particular restaurant chain was no tattoos. They just didn't feel like that was becoming to their customer base. Well, Antonio is wearing a long sleeve shirt at the interview. He has a tattoo, but doesn't mention it at all. So you can imagine trouble comes, 6-7 weeks later, he's got the short sleeve shirt on and you can see this gigantic artwork on his arm, Well, Maggie's upset, and here's why. It's not that she doesn't like Antonio. Antonio is a great worker. She's disappointed that he wasn't honest with her. And this is 2 different generations I'm about to describe.
Yeah.
She sits down with him and says, Antonio, why didn't you bring this up? And of course he goes, well, this is just a personal expression of my identity. You shouldn't question this. And that's the next gen. This is part of my identity, my piercing, my tattoo, my hair color, whatever. She sees, the angle of Gen X and baby boomers. She's seeing, hey, you need to be true to the core values of this organization. You weren't honest. You can see how they're butting heads based on generations. He values, I'm bringing my whole self to work. My personal identity. She's saying, but this is the mission. We all agreed to integrity and, transparency. So I'm so proud of Maggie. She meets with Antonio several times. I mean, like 4 or 5 times for 1-hour meetings, and they duke it out verbally. Finally, Maggie sits down with Antonio and says, Antonio, can I propose a solution? You're a good worker. I want you to stay on this team. But you're going to have to wear clothing, an under something or a shirt that's long sleeve that will not show that tattoo because of our policy.
Wow.
I will call corporate and I'll ask corporate to reconsider this policy. But until they change it, I'm going to need you to do this. Then she said, you and I are going to need to stand in front of the entire team and talk about how we've come to an agreement and how we respect each other. And they did. And it won everybody over at the heart level.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
What I think leaders need to do. But that's in the chapter I call How to Be Flexible Without Giving In. And I think that's
so good
to do. Yeah.
That's so good. I mean, that is an example of like the both and that we rarely hear. We either hear like, Maggie's a jerk or Antonio's a rebel. And it's this polarization. And you basically said, hey, grace and truth. Boom. Look at that. And who knows, corporate might rewrite the policy. The team might grow closer together. I love this. This is a great analogy. You mentioned in your book, I don't know if you even have a copy in front of you. Maybe you memorized this, but I love it. I read it. It's about the battery fluid.
Yes.
Wasn't that your book? Wasn't that your book?
Yeah.
Something about, can you share it? I don't even know if you can remember that. I could bring it up.
Yeah, I can't. Well, I can paraphrase it anyway. So this is a quote I put at the very front of the book. I basically say in this quote, if you think you're smarter than the previous generations, keep this in mind. 50 years ago, an automobile manual told you how to change the valves. Today, it tells us not to drink the battery fluid.
That's good. That is so good. Man, I love that.
Like,
I love that.
Are we really evolving,
Yes. Well, and I think that's great because I'll be honest, now I'm Gen X. I'm 45. So I tend to be, I actually like my role really a lot. And I'll share why. I like it because as I read your book, which was brilliant, it started to say, hey, Kary, you know what? Lean into this younger generation. They're actually telling you they want to be mentored. Yes. Because Tim, I felt it, our company's doing some very cutting edge things with blockchain and Web3 and NFTs related to publishing. And as a result, I've had to hire some younger people because they're the ones who often know about it. And I didn't catch it, but they're actually like saying things, and it's basically a cry that says, hey, mentor me. Yeah. And I might know the tech, Kary, but I don't know like the business. What do you think? Have you seen that?
Absolutely. In fact, I love some of the social scientists that I quote in this book talk about, ancient elders and digital natives. And basically what they talk about is, what if the older generation poured into the younger generation the emotional intelligence that they have learned over a 40-year career?
Yes.
But what if they receive the digital mentoring that this emerging generation naturally
Ooh,
has.
that's so good. That is so
So it's
good.
really reverse mentoring. It's both parties pouring into the other, giving dignity to each other, swapping stories and finding common ground, and then learning something that they need to learn. So that's the final chapter. I really pitch reverse mentoring. And I think we both need each other. Yeah.
That is so good. Hey, we have some great Facebook followers here. We have someone named Bishnu Simkata, if I pronounced that right. Wow, that's an intense name. I love it. I love it. Listen, thanks for your grace, your comments here. This is awesome. She says how to be flexible without giving in. Wow, great cooperative team ethos. Lots of people are jumping in now because my email finally went out. I apologize to that, but people are going to have to get the replay. But Ricky, says Tim, she's a fan here. We got lots of people jumping in from all over. Tell us where you're from. Tag somebody. Tag someone who's a boomer, a Gen X, a millennial, a Z. How does this even relate to dinner? I mean, you go to dinner. And I look at restaurants and I'm like, whoa, everyone's here and what are we doing? Generational diversity. Yeah.
Can I just make my this is a personal opinion. This is not God speaking. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I feel as though smart technology, while it's helped us in so many ways, has made us socially lazy. And our emotional intelligence has dropped. Now that is science. So if I don't want to work at face-to-face relationships, of course I grab this gadget. It's just like walking into an elevator. When I was younger, we'd all talk to each other. Now I'm staring at the numbers, staring at my phone, looking down. Right. I heard somebody the other day walking into a public restroom saying, look up, look up, look up. And all the people that were walking out looking at their phone. So I know you've all heard this before. Maybe you've said it before, but we have got to be better at interpersonal relationships and at emotional intelligence. Good. And Kary, really the bottom line, this book, while I hope it's very helpful on many levels, it's going to build the social and emotional intelligence of the reader. I hope that's my hope. And that's what I think is going to really help us going forward. It's not going to be better at tech. Get better at tech. It's going to be better at people. Yeah.
That's so good. Again, we got people jumping in here, loving on it. Hey, folks, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. In fact, I'm going to challenge everyone right now. Probably, I'm gonna dare I say that generational intelligence. Let me say that again. GQ, generational quotient. Dare I say that this is going to be the secret superpower of churches, businesses, schools, families. If you have a family that's just like writing off Gen Z because they're idiots, or right, or the opposite. How much of our movies are shaping? Those stupid parents, they're so out of touch. I got to share a big win. Yeah, go for it, Tim.
Well, I'm sorry, Kary. We're both tripping over each other because we got so excited about this.
Yeah.
One of the things I try to explain in the book for people that are just frustrated at other generations is this.
Yeah.
The term generation gap actually became a thing over 50 years ago. It was the 1960s when John Poppy, who is the editor of Life magazine, came up with this term. The baby boomers, my generation, were growing up and we were so different from the builder generation. But here's what's happened. Over the last 50 to 60 years, the gap has gotten wider because our screens in our life have gone from public to private. So when I was a kid, it was one screen, a TV, black and white, believe it or not.
That's deep. Yes.
In the living room, we all watched a show together, talked about it. We enjoyed it together. Even though we were different generations, we enjoyed it together. And I know we got multiple TVs then. And then the computer came out. Now we got portable devices. So a teenager can have a fundamentally different niche than their parents or their colleagues. So you can see this now that we're private with our screens. Oh my, a mom and dad might know that their daughter is on Instagram, but she doesn't know she's got 5 Finsta accounts, fake Instagram accounts where she's developed personas And mom doesn't know why she's acting the way she, well, I'll tell you why she's acting. She's got a whole world you don't even know about mom. So again, this is a
Dang. All
resource.
right. Mic drop. I didn't even know what that term was. I'm like, what? What is what'd you call it? A finsta?
Finsta. Yeah. Yeah. Some of
Oh
you
my
probably know
gosh.
what that is.
Yeah.
It's a
Fake
thing now for
Instagram.
students. Yeah.
Folks, this is why I purposely listen, Tim. I'm not only a fan of yours, but when the John Maxwell team said, "Hey, listen, we want you, Kary, to work on this book," oh my gosh! I mean, I went on Facebook. You don't know this. I went on Facebook. I didn't say your name, but I basically said 11-year miracle just happened. Seriously, I did. And I just said, like, this is a dream come true. And the reason why is because I try to get smart people around me. And Tim, you're one of these people who you are like this scientist when it comes to generational diversity. And you can look at the data. First of all, I'm going to offend a lot of people, but oh well. Scientists usually have no EQ. Okay, scientists are usually they cannot relate. Scientists typically give data, and they can't communicate with relevance. And I know that's a big, broad spectrum.
Yeah.
You have a gift. You have a gift, though, to take the high level research and put the cookies on the bottom shelf. So guys like me and our audience can be like, oh my gosh, I get that. How is that a gift? How'd you figure that thing out?
Well, Kary, I have the same admiration for you. I'm thrilled to be working with you. I tell you what, when I started growing leaders in 2003, I decided I wanted to be pracademic. So I made that word up, but I want to be research-based, but very practical and interpreting it for listeners. Here's 4 steps you can take now that we know this. So I don't always do it great, but I work to make sure that everybody knows this is what we got to do. Get up off your butt and do something about this stuff. So, yeah.
Do you see, folks, how many words you're learning? I mean, seriously, your brain cells are expanding as we speak, or I don't even know if you can do that. Maybe your brain cells are multiplying. But we have Jeff from Facebook. Tim is really onto something. I believe it comes down to mutual respect between younger and older, like me, workers, and anyone else that is perceived as different. I know the LinkedIn crowd has to be listening to this. They have to get this. Because LinkedIn especially, I mean, we see, you're right, people alongside each other. What was in your book? Oh, I know it. Your other book, 8 Paradoxes, talked about the space race.
Yeah.
And how they put like certain people in the front and certain people in the back. Talk to us about that.
Oh, this is one of my favorite stories in the world. So listeners, enjoy. Back in the 1960s, we all remember the story of how JFK, the president at the time, said we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And we did. July 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin are walking on the moon. So we achieved the goal. What most of us don't know is that there were mentors, for lack of a better word, that were seasoned veterans at NASA that were overseeing the team of operators, engineers, that were on the controls. The average age of the people on the controls, 27 years old.
Oh my gosh.
In fact, Jack Garman, the one that actually pulled the trigger, if you will, and said, go, we're going to land on the moon, 23 years old, 1 year out of college. So I love the fact that NASA said we need older experienced people to advise, but we need these MIT grads right out of college that understand technology. Isn't this good? So how brilliant that NASA at the time said we need both, but old folks, you're not the ones that are going to get to do it. You don't know what we need to know now, but you know the timeless stuff. These guys know the timely stuff. And that's what organizations need. Timeless and timely coming together. Yeah.
I love this for a lot of reasons. I'm the weird guy, Tim, no joke. If you found this photo for my 18th birthday, I'm not even joking. I was a weird dude. I was training to be a pastor. But for my 18th birthday, while many of my friends were out having alcohol celebrations, I decided to invite 6 couples that were in their 50s or 60s, older than my parents, because they had mentored me.
Wow.
And I mean, and my best man in my wedding was 65, and it wasn't
Oh
my
my
dad.
gosh.
Wasn't my
Wow.
dad, named Carl. And here's why. I'm passionate about your book because I believe that I was headed for suicide. I mean, I was done with
Wow.
life. I was like, screw life. And yet an older man reached out and said, I
Mm,
believe in you. Talk
yeah.
about that. You had John Maxwell do that for you.
Yeah.
Why is it so important when an older man or an older woman looks to a young person and says, I believe in you, and then actually exhibits, I don't know, the faith, the risk?
Yeah.
What do you think?
My thought is that all of us as young people are trying to figure out who we are.
Mm,
And we sometimes need someone with more experience to confirm what they see because we're not even sure to trust ourselves yet. Come on, let's be honest. A teenager,
yes.
I'm writing in pencil right now, not an ink, But
Yes.
when that older woman or man comes alongside and says, I see this in you, oh my gosh, suddenly we have hope that it isn't just us hoping or
Wow.
wondering if we're right about this. So when our kids turned 12 years old,
Mm,
my wife and I, Pam and I, made the smartest parenting decision we've made in our lives. We worked with our children to find 6 one-day mentors. So Bethany came first. Bethany had 6
wow.
women that she thought were really cool as an 8th grader or 9th grader or whatever, and women that we agreed that were really wonderful
Yeah.
models, role models. She met with them one-on-one throughout the year, and I watched my little girl go from a thermometer to a thermostat with her friends. She
Oh my
began to set the
gosh.
temperature, and it was
Oh,
the
that's
input.
good. That's good. Thermometer to
Yeah,
thermostat. Oh my gosh. I
yeah.
love that.
And I really believe that number one, these ladies didn't say anything we weren't already saying. In fact,
Yes.
isn't it true as a parent, you go, I've been saying that to you for 13 years,
That's
but
right.
they were saying things that confirmed, and she
Yeah.
listened to those voices. As a teen, your voice as a parent goes down, other people's voice goes up in
Yes.
influence. So we simply
Oh my
leveraged the
god.
generations
This is
like
so
you
good.
did and had a best man that was 65 years old at your wedding. That's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Oh man. Folks, get the book. Team, drop in the link. A New Kind of Diversity. Pre-order it now. Okay. Um, I'm waiting because I want that audiobook. I'm just saying. But I already did get to read the print copy. And let me tell you what, the charts you have in it, where you kind of say, look, boomers do this, Z does this. You got the whole crowd blowing this up here. You got people tagging friends. You got people say, I so believe in this. We have Dawn, yes, leverage the generations. Rachel, thermometers and thermostats. One of my favorite habitudes.
Oh,
Oh, look at
thank you,
that.
Rachel.
Look at that. Okay. So, Tim, we are thrilled that you're speaking at our conference. I mean, I know you speak to big crowds. It's John Maxwell, Eric Thomas, Tim Elmore, and yet Tim's coming to speak to the Igniting Souls conference. Um,
Kary, you are
so,
full of hyperbole today, but thank you very
oh
much.
no. Listen, I am so excited. And so, what are you going to teach us as we wrap this up? I know I'm going a little long, but I can't
Yeah,
help it. What are you going to teach us?
we'll go through this topic, but what I'll do at the conference and something we couldn't do here, I will show that big chart. Remember the 2-page
Yes.
centerfold basically inside the book,
Yes.
where I really allow a person with one fell swoop to see, I can compare and contrast the boomers with Gen Z or millennials with the
Wow.
builders. So it's going to be a fun time. I'm really looking forward to being with you, and this should be a fun time. We're going to laugh at each other and with
Oh yeah.
ourselves,
Oh
but we're
yeah.
going to learn together, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Folks, the only actions are number one, take what Tim said today, apply it. If you're young, you have something to offer the older
Yeah.
generation. If you're older, you have something to offer. We need to get away from this ageism
Yeah.
that is a real
Yeah.
thing. And I just cannot wait. I cannot wait for the GQ assessment. That thing's coming out here
Yeah.
in a couple weeks.
Well,
Folks, you're
Kary,
going to
thank
love
you
it.
for your help on that. I so
Hey,
appreciate it. Yeah.
hey, listen, it is an honor. So get the book, folks. Sign up for the conference today. And Tim, last thing, I know you got a big business. You hire young people. This isn't just theory. But where can people find out more about you?
Yeah. Well, the organization I lead is growingleaders.com, Growing Leaders. And then, I worked for John Maxwell for 20 years before I started Growing Leaders, and we're now reconnecting again. So Maxwell
So good.
Leadership is also a place if somebody wanted to do an event, that'd be where you can find me as well.
That is awesome. John Maxwell and Tim Elmore coming together. Seriously, I was like, all right, my friend. Well, listen, everybody, have a great day. Make your weekend matter, and we'll be in touch. And share this live stream. Tag a friend. It's going to be around for a while, and tell somebody of a different generation you need to watch this.